Good evening, folks. Triple Crown here, coming to you from Vancouver, British Columbia. This is a round 10 summary of the HBG Global War 1939 series, playtest 5. And just want to talk about another error that Triple Crown made in regards to victory cities. Now, these are the victory city or condition roundels for BBR. And I made this little sort of tracker, so to speak, to sort of keep them. And the red line is, well, believe it or not, there's the same 12, not exact conditions, but you need 12 victory points in BBR. But in 39, you need 12 victory cities. So some of them cross over. Now HBG just released a new victory city roundel set, which I'm going to order. But this is what I'm currently using. Anyways, what happened here was, you can see this thing is quite flimsy. I'm going to actually be making something new, is one of them had actually fallen off and gone behind, and I did not notice. Big mistake. As you can see here, anything beyond the red line is beyond 12. So currently the Axis are sitting with 13 victory cities: Berlin, Rome, I'll zoom in, Berlin, Rome, Paris, Warsaw, Leningrad, Moscow, Stalingrad, Tokyo, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Calcutta, South Asia. Now I use this for Singapore and Manila. And right now in sort of, what do you call this? In flux or in play is Cairo. So Cairo falls to the Axis. That means they will have 14 victory cities, and that is probably game. So we will get into sort of what happened in round 9. Some very interesting things happened. Good and bad for both sides. So first we'll start here again in sort of the Middle East. So I'm going to focus first on this territory in Iraq. Now, the Axis thought they were smart. The Germans had a bunch of army units there, and they had, I think it was 11 armor units that went in, and they had some Italians there, 3 Italians that were there, so 14 units in total. And the British counterattacked, which, initially the Germans thought that was going to be okay because they're going to be whittling down the British forces and they have more coming, so they're going to be okay. However, the British rolled very well with their dice. Even their infantry attacked, and they wiped out in one round of combat. They killed all 14 units, and they attacked with 21 infantry, 1 armor, and 10 aircraft, and they only suffered 6 casualties. So that is huge, because it just delays the Germans one more turn, and now they've got a little bit of an issue in a sense that, the British keep building and building and building, and they currently have, about 7 armor sitting there in Cairo, and 4 Churchills, which defended in 8, and another stack of infantry and a fortification in Transjordan, and this whole schwack of aircraft. And they've added another Lancaster bomber, and they roll 3 dice at 4, so that is pretty devastating. So that's what's happened good for the Axis. So now, with the stacks of the British being so large, the Italians can't open like they were. So they're kind of stagnated a little bit, and the Italians were not able to retake Iraq back from the British, which meant they did not get their 5 NO bonus. So that's a little bit painful for the Italians, but they're still making a really decent economy. What happened sort of good for the Axis was this sort of represents the British fleet, which is no longer in the Mediterranean. It is sitting in Sea Zone 64, which is here off of Cairo, and they evacuated the Mediterranean. They did that because the German Navy, which you can see here, there's 3 Bismarck-class battleships, a couple cruisers, a schwack of destroyers, and a bunch of submarines. They're all sitting off the coast of Turn, which is this sea zone up here. And what that allowed the Italians to do was to build 4 naval transports and a destroyer. And if you recall, in this game, at the start of the next round, the Germans can basically lend, or the Italians can lend the Germans up to 2 naval transports to transport units across the pond over here to Africa if they choose. So the shock is about to start, and now they're going to have complete control of the Mediterranean. So a little bit of a setback here in the Middle East, but in a couple turns. And I thought this a while ago, maybe the British could have built I guess they could have built a second minor IC here in Alexandria, but now it's probably going to be too late to do that with all the units coming from, via this small navy down here. So that's what's happening there. Over here in Western Europe, the Germans bulked up. Again, they built, this time, a heavier build, 10 units in Western Europe, and they used their train to bring in more units up to Paris. So Paris is going to be secure, but the British are still managing to be a nuisance. They did do another landing here in Normandy, and they dropped off unopposed another 4 infantry in Barcelona. So that's kind of what's happening there on the European side of the map. I forgot to move an American destroyer, but no builds over here on the East Coast. That destroyer is going to be right here. So now the Americans finally moved their navy to Wake Island. They built an air base and a naval base. So now their current combined defensive capabilities of a combined Commonwealth and U.S. is 85 units defending aircraft and navy. And the Japanese, with this massive navy down here, which is all actually sitting off of the Philippines, can in this navy off of there is 8 destroyers off of Tokyo here. They are a combined 80 units, so they can actually take a poke at the Americans if they want. Now that is not including the American transports and the Commonwealth transports, which total there's 14 naval transports sitting there as well. They defended a 1, and they have to be taken last as casualties. So if they were successful, that might be worth it for them. However, the American follow-up is not too shabby. They've got 4 submarines sitting here in Hawaii, 3 naked aircraft carriers, and in round 10, the Americans can build B-29s. They could have built 3. They just decided to build 1. They roll 3 dice, or 4 dice at 4. So, and they actually can move, I think it's something crazy. And the range on the B-29s was fairly significant in World War II, so I try to reflect that. I think they can move 9. My eyes aren't deceiving me. So from a naval base, they can move 10 spaces. So that is huge. And they built a couple more fighters. And given the fact the Japanese are building submarines, the Americans decided to build 4 destroyers. Or is it 5 destroyers? 5 more destroyers. And over here in British Columbia, the Canadians built a Lancaster bomber, and the British built a tactical bomber. So the tactical bomber could land on this escort carrier they built a few turns ago. And over here in the Pacific, the Commonwealth decided to finally grab a money on. They grabbed the Dutch East Indies. I think it's called the Dutch East Indies. Yep. And they lost in infantry doing so. There was only a lone Japanese infantry defending. So that was good for the Anzacs. And the ping pong happening here in Asia, not really anybody making much headway other than maybe the Russians, who are, their heavy armor are sort of punching through, but they are now spread out and maybe open to some Japanese counterattack. And the Japanese, they had 5 ground units sitting here in Kashmir, and they all moved up into this territory here into China. So Russia's got 2 heavy armor there and another Katyusha, but it might not be enough to counterattack depending on what the Japanese do. However, the KMT were able to move and support this armor, this heavy armor sitting in Sichuan, because the Japanese can counterattack with 4 infantry. So the Japanese are spending a little bit to defend sort of the Chinese territories that are not along the coast. And next turn, you might see the Japanese sort of reposition their navy to sort of protect. Not sure if it's better to protect Tokyo at this point, if they can build enough to protect Tokyo, or they can build enough to perhaps defend Hong Kong and Shanghai if they feel that it's going to be captured next turn by the Americans. So we'll have to see what happens there. Now, at this point of the game, something else that G.I. Joe likes to do is a term that he learned from, or a move he learned from Gargantua, and that is to basically sacrifice your aircraft to kill ground units. Now, all these ground units are sitting in Wake Island, and that's that's all these ground units that are up here, and there's about 28. So do the Japanese sacrifice their aircraft and do an air blitz eventually on Wake Island and take out all of the American infantry? Or when the American infantry do land, because you know the Allies are going to have to secure at least 2 or 3 victory cities along the coast, do their aircraft just go and air blitz all of the American surviving ground units and take them out of the game so they cannot go and liberate another city? So that is a problem there. In regards to the navies here, the Americans are not strong enough by themselves to take on the Japanese, and the Japanese are not strong enough to take out the combined defense of the Commonwealth and U.S. Although the U.S., the tide is slowly starting to turn in the Americans' favor. So stay tuned for 5 more rounds, as the Anzacs did build a couple more naval transports down here. So they are going to have 4 transports in the water to sort of, you know, break the Japanese economy. So well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Stay tuned for round 11.